Hello people, hello my friends, and welcome back to Great or Bait, the greatest series on YouTube. Now, I'm gonna try and keep this introduction short, and this time all I have to say is that I see every single one of the comments you guys put out about suggestions about cars. I just gotta say, I see them all, but because I get so many, it's gonna be very hard to cover them all. So, those that are still waiting, please have patience. I promise I'll do my best to get to them, and we'll see when that happens. But anyway, let's jump into today's episode really quick. We've got two very bad cars today, I'm gonna be honest. The first one is the Morgan 3-wheeler suggested by Yo-Yo, and I feel like both cars that we're seeing today are not only objectively two of the worst cars in the game, but also they were purposely picked because they're insanely bad, or the people who suggested them are just trolling me. So I mean, either way it's fair. So this thing, absolute death trap, absolutely the worst car I've ever drifted. Not only results wise, like it is pretty bad. The second one is even worse, but like this one just feels so bad. It's insane. It's an actual death cage. I think Noodles here described it perfectly. It's absolutely aids the drive. There's no reward whatsoever. I feel like this car could do decent just because, you know, on paper it's pretty good. Like, it's got a good power to weight ratio, it slides, small wheelbase, whatever. But the understeer is insane. It's ridiculous. And you're looking at a run that took me a little over an hour to get, just because of how fucking disgusting this car is to drift. So taking all of this into account, I just can't give it more than a 3 out of 10. It barely beat out a Scout. So yeah, there's that. It's also a pretty slow car, as you can tell here. It has, I believe, the same amount of power as the Civic that I tested last time, which, I mean, quite a few cars in the game get, you know, not very powerful engine swaps, and this is one of them. So downhill, it got a 403, which is, I guess, okay, but still very slow compared to most cars. So yeah, 2.5 out of 10, just because that's what I give the Civic. Here's where the things get interesting though. It is actually not the worst at acceleration. Again, thank you Travis for testing this for me. It is pretty decent, at least at launch. Past 170, it's kinda but for what it is, this is probably the thing that's best at. In fact, I would say this is definitely the thing that is best at. I still gave it a 3 out of 10, but it's almost usable. So okay, grip wise, man. You know how last week I tested the Neo and I said it is the first time I had to give a 1 out of 10? You're gonna get used to seeing that in this video, because this is an even harder 1 out of 10. This thing, I feel like I could have probably built it to be faster if I just gave it like 200 horsepower or something like that. And I don't know, man, it is so bad. The understeer is insane, and the moment you just lift off the throttle, man, I don't know, it's hard to describe this without completely trashing on it, but at the end of the day, that's what this car did to me. Look at that, I'm doing 130 kilometers an hour to that corner. Do you know how much the Neo did last episode? It did like 240. It's insane, it's ridiculous. And obviously I cooked this too, and like I didn't bother to like experiment, but is it even worth it, man? I mean, come on. So I did a 59 something there, and I think this car did a 58 something like that. That's I'm gonna put a comparison on the screen to the C-Class world record, because right now, as I'm saying this, I have no idea if it's faster or not, but I feel like it's about there. So Jesus Christ, I have no words to describe how bad this car is. Honestly, I kind of want to tell you guys to try it out for yourselves, just to make sure I'm not insane and I'm not the only one who thinks the same. But at the same time, I don't really wish any of you to go through this torture again. I mean, again, I had to go through it, but still, holy fuck, man, it is insane. And this is probably the easiest 1 out of 10 I've given to any car. It has no grip whatsoever. I'm sure there's worse cars out there. I haven't tested the trucks or the Peels or whatever, but man, no, man, I'm not excited for that either. Okay, the situation does not change much when talking about dirt. It is still bad. It's a little bit better just because it has off-road tires, which recently I've seen a trend where not a lot of cars do, and thankfully somehow this car does. I would say it's still horrendously bad because it kind of lacks any sort of any sort of anything, if I'm being honest. It has power, but not nearly enough. There's cars I tested with 1,000 horsepower more than this. It has acceleration, kind of, but you get cars like the Noble, which outpace it completely. You have cars like, I don't know, the NSX, which outgrip it completely. Like, it's so weird. The Neo did so much better last week, and it has no off-road tires. So, man, I don't know. I tried. I really tried, but I just can't give it more. I only give it 1.5 because it has off-road tires. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a 1. So here's the results. We have a new worst rated car with an 11 out of 50 for a average of 2.2 out of 10. Now, you may think this is incredibly bad and there's no way it can get any worse than this, but my friend Mars had an idea a couple episodes ago, and this is that idea. The Lamborghini LM002 or 002, whatever. And oh my god, this is the closest thing to a tank that this game has to offer, and it feels that way. It is bad on every single level. It's not 100% unusable on every level, but it is insanely bad on every level. That includes drifting, because this was the first car that I've tested that could not break the 140k barrier, and I can assure you I tested it for as long, if not longer, than some of the other vehicles. It's crazy. It is insanely heavy. It transitions like no other car. It has the power, don't get me wrong, it is the most powerful car that I've tested actually, but it gets only off-road tires. Only the stocks and the off-road tires. I don't remember when I went for, I think I did stocks because they have less grip, but still, it is insane. This is probably the first 2 out of 10, and I'm sure I'll get more, but still, man, holy crap. And oh yeah, it does not get much better here as well, because while this thing has plenty of power, it has no aero whatsoever, no aero coefficient. I don't know, man. I'm trying, okay? I'm trying, but 2 out of 10 is the best I can give this thing, okay? And when Travis had a run on the drag strip with it, it turns out the aero coefficient really just does fuck all, because as you can see, it has an insanely slow launch, and yeah, it's bad. It scored like a 15.5 seconds, something like that. I can't give it more than this. I'm sure there's slower cars, but still, man. Okay, now this is probably where you all expected it was gonna do the worst on. Surprisingly, it did better than the Morgan. It is like 4 times heavier and has over double the power, but it's still a bit more stable. I don't know how that works. I don't know why that is, but it's still a little bit more stable, and I was surprised myself. Don't get me wrong, it is still an abomination that did like a second and a half less than the fucking Morgan, so it's still insanely bad. And you'll notice here that I didn't really test this for a long time, which yeah, you can totally fault me for, I suppose, but I don't think any of you would go through the pain that I went through, even for as many laps as I did to test this thing. So yeah, again, 1 out of 10. It really can't get much worse other than the Morgan, I guess. Now, if I were drunk and I came back home and for some reason I'd open up Forza, right? And I said, I want to use a car I never used before for dirt. This was maybe, just maybe, borderline usable if I was drunk. Other than that, there's no world in which this car is any decent off-road. it's the only category that I can say it kinda, sort of, almost half possibly works. And that's a very stretched definition, I know, but comparing the results, this is definitely its best, and that's still worse than probably in 85-90% of the cars in the game. This car is absolutely terrible all around, and even though there's definitely cars that did worse off-road, and I will test more that are bad as time goes on, this is the best I can give it, 3 out of 10. And here they are, all the cars. The Lamborghini LMO02 got a 9.5 out of 50, which is only a 1.9 out of 10. This thing did a score on average lower than a 2 out of 10, which is just insane. But yeah, thank you, boys. Actually, no, I'm not gonna thank you guys for suggestions on this one, because it was terrible. I had no fun whatsoever. Genuinely. I have already picked the cars for the next episode. I don't know if people suggested it or not, but I really wanted to do this one. It's gonna be an AMR Pro episode, by the way. So yeah, stick around if you want to see that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you then.